basically a guide to where there's been the biggest loss of liberty over the last 2 years. And somehow the Guardian's team discovered that it was Belgium. Is that correct?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, good to be with you. They produced a map of Europe with different shades corresponding to different levels of violation of democratic freedoms. And red meaning more violations, blue meaning less. And what they show in their map is that all the countries that had democratic violations were in Eastern Europe. And the only one in Western Europe that had any democratic violations was Belgium. This is during the course of the pandemic. And you might have thought that's a rather strange thing to say, given that almost every Western country in Europe had a lockdown. There were mandatory stay-at-home orders. There were forced business closures. There were restrictions on visiting friends and family. Yet, according to The Guardian, Belgium's the only country in Western Europe that saw moderate democratic violations.
And as you pointed out, we've had other countries, Austria, for example, criminalized the unvaccinated and were actually moving towards a regime. They passed a law where you could be put in jail for not getting vaccinated. But even in France, where you can't go and get a little café au lait and chocolatine without having your vaccine pass, that too is an undoubted curtailment of liberty. Why was Belgium singled out then?
Well, the article didn't go into a great deal of detail, but it was something to do with discrimination against a particular demographic group within Belgium. So it seems that what may have happened is that the data they relied on to produce this map, which is one ought to be rather suspicious of for the reasons I've given, that data seemed to be more related to discrimination or alleged discrimination than fundamental curtailments of liberties and civil rights, such as the right to go and visit a friend or the right to have your business open for customers, etc.
So basically, The Guardian doesn't regard having the right to determine how many people you have round to your house for dinner, or doesn't regard being able to leave the house only on the government say-so. The Guardian apparently doesn't regard those as curtailments of liberty.
Well, yes, it's hard to know. I suppose they might say that all those restrictions that were put in place on Western European populations were put in place through democratic mechanisms. So they're not actually restrictions of democratic rights at all. Of course, one could respond to that by saying, well, not everything that a democracy does is really consistent with what a broad understanding of democratic rights entails. For example, 51% of people can't vote to shoot the other 49%.